Good evening. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has warned Iran of the most intense strikes that will take place today. The United States insists Iran's missile firing capabilities have been crippled up to 90%, drone strike capabilities up to 83% on the 11th day of the war. But Iran refuses to either surrender or even consider a ceasefire. Iran, on the contrary, has threatened to massively escalate, with reports from Tehran indicating Iran will now attack Israel and US interests in the region with newer generation missiles with a payload of 1 ton and more. Not just that, Iran has warned the United States and Israel they may have started the war, but Iran will end the war and on Iran's terms. There is a widespread fear this war may escalate and escalate very dangerously in the days ahead, even though US President Donald Trump on day 11 insists most of their war aims have been met, and according to him, he is indicating the war may end soon. Donald Trump says it's possible he would be willing to talk to Iran. The US, according to him, has made significant progress in limiting Iran's missile strike capabilities. Washington, D.C. indicates more than 50 Iranian warships, Iranian Navy warships have been destroyed in the past 11 days. Pete Hegseth says Iran will be hit harder than ever if it does anything to stop the flow of oil and energy through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's National Security Council Secretary Ali Larijani, he's rebuffed any threats. He insists, and he's made it very clear to the Americans and to Israel, Iran does not fear your empty threats. The United Arab Emirates says it's intercepted just today 8 missiles and 26 drones. So there's dangerous escalation on the cards at a time when US President Donald Trump has spoken both to the Russian President Vladimir Putin and to the Chinese President Xi Jinping. The question, is there an off-ramp, or are we staring at very dangerous escalation with Iran targeting oil facilities in the Gulf region, trying to draw in other countries into this conflict? And let me now get you some details of the cost of war that's sharply spiking. Estimates indicate that this war is costing the United States upwards of $1 billion per day and counting. So in the first 10 days of war, the United States has spent more than $10.2 billion. With about $5.6 billion, and these are all estimates that are coming in from the United States. $5.6 billion worth of munition used in just the first 48 hours of the strike. That is how intense the bombing of Iran, not just Tehran, but across Iran. That's how intense the bombing was. The battlefield losses are also mounting for the United States of America. 11 MQ-9 Reaper drones have been shot down, and each drone costs between $30 to $35 million. At least 2, and this is one of the biggest losses to the United States, 2 THAAD systems. This is Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Systems. 2 THAAD systems worth approximately $500 million each. They've been hit, and that just goes on to indicate how precise is Iranian targeting of US assets. And this would indicate now when THAAD systems are taken down, when radars are taken down, the US and Israel, in some areas, they're fighting blind. The United States has fired more than 170 Tomahawk cruise missiles, costing about $626 million. Then there are other munition and precision strike munitions, $33 million on that. Massive bunker busters, the GBU-31s, costing about $28 million. Iran's retaliation has damaged key US assets in the region, including a $1.1 billion early warning radar at a base in Qatar. And this happened on day 1 of the conflict, on February 28th itself. The same day, $20 million worth of US satellite communication terminals were destroyed in Bahrain. Another $30 million worth of radomes were hit in Camp Arijan in Kuwait. Then on the 2nd of March, and this is a blue-on-blue strike, which is extremely, extremely expensive as far as the United States are concerned. 3 US F-15 Strike Eagle fighter jets. They were lost in what US claims is friendly fire incident. This cost the US another $282 million. The conflict has taken a human toll now, with the 8th US service personnel confirmed killed in action. The economic impact is spreading beyond the battlefield, with Israel estimating the damage from the air war with Iran at nearly $2.9 billion every week for Israel. Now, apprehension is, at least that's what Iran is saying, this war, they are now going to strike with precision weapons, with newer generation weapons. Each missile with a payload of 1 ton will target either Israel or US interests in the region. The United States has warned Iran that the most intense airstrikes will take place in hours from now. Some of the strikes have started even as we speak. Iran insists it will neither surrender nor seek a ceasefire. Despite 11 days of intense bombing, Iran continues to strike back, and hard. So is this war actually progressing as per the Israeli and American plan? Joining me on India First, live from Jerusalem, is David Mensah, top aide and spokesperson of Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Mr. Mensah, welcome. Iran says US and Israel started the war. Iran will end it on its terms. Is Iran doing better than you expected? What is your assessment, Mr. Mensah, on day 11 of this conflict?
Gaurav, it's good to be with you again. Thank you for having me and allowing me to share with you the latest position from Israel's perspective. We set out a very clear objective in this war. That is to remove the nuclear threat and ensure that the Iranian regime can never obtain nuclear weapons. That has been our overwhelming objective. And when you say that Israel started this war, just a reminder for your viewers that we will never allow a regime that has, since for the last 47 years, been shouting death to Israel, death to America. Now, experience has taught the Jewish people that when someone says that they wish to kill your people, to wipe your nation off the face of the earth, then experience has taught us to listen to them and to believe them. And I tell you, Gaurav, we do believe them. When they shout death to Israel, we know that the most dangerous weapons in the world can never go into the possession of the most dangerous regime in the world. So we're working very hard to destroy Iran's war machine. We're severely degrading their ballistic missile program as well, but also their proxies. We're taking apart their ability to support their proxies as well. But I would say at the moment, we're ahead of schedule and we're doing very, very well.
Okay, so you say you're ahead of schedule and you're doing very well. Despite early decapitation or assassination, as Iran puts it, the regime did not collapse. There is a new supreme leader. The system appears to be in place, holding back and fighting back. So it's holding and fighting back. Are you in for a long-drawn conflict, sir?
Well, the Prime Minister has said very, very clearly that it will continue as long as is necessary. He made clear this is not years long, but it will continue as long as is necessary to ensure that the existential threat from the Iranian regime is neutralized. So that's why our IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, are striking military and regime targets in Iran in close coordination with our partners, the United States. And I'll tell you, the difference between what Iran is telling you and the truth is that Iran are focusing almost exclusively here in Israel on residential targets, on places where ordinary people live. I've told, I may have said this before, but you know, just last week I visited with the Prime Minister the small town of Bet Shemesh, which was hit by one of these Iranian ballistic missiles. The first thing I did when I got there is I looked around. There were no military sites there. There were no police sites there or any symbols of the state. There was a synagogue there, and that ballistic missile hit that synagogue and killed people hiding in the shelter, taking shelter there. It killed 9 people, 3 children from the same family. Iran's objective is to instill terror into our people. That is the nature of their terrorist regime. They are firing at our civilians. We, on the other hand, are firing at the terrorist masterminds and the controllers of this regime, and we've had tremendous success.
Okay. Though President Trump says many of the war aims have been met and the war may be ending soon, are the US and Israel on the same page, Mr. Mensah?
Look, I can share with your viewers, Gaurav, that the Prime Minister and the President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, are in daily contact, sometimes more than once a day, on the phone. And both of us agree, and this is what I think President Trump means. He says that we've achieved major operational success against Iran. The Israeli Air Force has achieved significant aerial superiority over Iran. In fact, just today, our Air Force was in operation again, taking out military targets in Tehran. And all the while, we're striking these targets across Iran. Thousands of strikes of targeted missiles, production sites, military infrastructure, air defenses, and weapons transfers to Iranian proxies such as Hezbollah. All of these things have been taken out because our message is extremely clear right now, and the Iranians would do well to listen to my voice. Israel now has the freedom to strike any target in Iran that threatens our security, and that's precisely what we're doing.
But right now, sir, it's the global energy security that's in jeopardy. Take, for example, the Strait of Hormuz that remains shut. Oil and gas prices are rising across the world. There's intense turmoil due to this. Is there an off-ramp? Because Iran says, let alone any talk of surrender, despite the series of strikes that you mentioned, let alone surrender, there is no question of a ceasefire either.
Look, our decision to take forward this war was taken with the knowledge that this is precisely what Iran would do. It would try to hold the rest of the world hostage by raising oil prices. President Trump has made clear that the US armed forces have destroyed, practically all but destroyed, the Iranian Navy. Both of our governments are working on a plan to make sure that the Straits of Hormuz are open, because Iran no longer has a navy. And President Trump has also made clear that US warships and US firepower will escort oil through those straits to make sure that this element whereby the Iranian regime are trying to blackmail the entire world will not succeed. The Prime Minister Netanyahu, and President Trump are very focused on this issue, and you can be sure that this element whereby the Iranians are trying to blackmail us will not succeed.
Okay, so you say Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Donald Trump, they speak almost every day, sometimes more than once. The IRGC has just made a statement that they will now deploy missiles with a payload of more than 1 ton. US assessment that more than 90% of missile strike capabilities of Iran have been taken down. Close to 83% of their drone strike capabilities have been taken down. What remains, sir, is that even more lethal, newer generation missiles, and is the worst yet to come in this conflict.
Look, we're well aware of Iran's capabilities. We're also well aware of our anti-missile technology. The defense shield which we've developed here, thank God, is very, very effective. It's in the high 90s%, but still it's not hermetic. And missiles and ballistic missiles, including cluster bombs, which are illegal under international law, are still finding, a few of them are finding their way through into Israel. I'll tell you, from Israel's home front perspective, our people remain resilient despite these Iranian attacks. Iran continues to launch these missiles and UAVs towards our civilian populations, but our defensive systems are working, and we're encouraging all of our people, which they are doing now to a very, very high degree, strict adherence to our home front command instructions, which tells people when and how to take cover. And that message is saving lives. So I'll tell you, from Israel's point of view, our home front is strong, we are resilient, And I'll also tell you something else, Gaurav, which maybe doesn't come across in international media. From left to right in this country, and you know, Gaurav, because you understand Israeli politics, you know that this country has a very vibrant, charged political environment. From left to right, there is a unity. And that unity is for victory. Victory to make sure that this Islamist regime, which threatens not only us here in Israel, but the rhetoric which they use here in Israel, which we take seriously, is the same rhetoric used by Islamists on the streets of New Delhi and in other parts of India, which is why we are so appreciated what your Prime Minister Modi, said to us here in Israel just a few days ago. He said that Israel and India, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu, share a zero tolerance for terrorism.
So zero tolerance to terror is your aim, and this operation, you say, sir, will continue as long as it takes to remove the regime in Iran, and we'll be tracking that story very closely. David Mensah, for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks. Are Israel and the United States on the same page when it comes to the war aims? Because a very important principle of war is not just statement of aim, but maintenance of aim in combat. Has the US changed the goalpost not just once, but repeatedly in the past 11 days? And does that then send confusing signals to commanders on ground on what the aim is and whether it's being maintained through the course of battle? Take, for example, multiple statements of US President Donald Trump from the 28th of February. So on the 28th of February, the US President, he took a hard line. He warned Iran to surrender or face death. He pledged that Iran's war-fighting capabilities, their missile industry, their navy, it would be decimated. Then on the 2nd of March, there was a change in tone. Donald Trump suggested that the conflict could last maybe 4, maybe 5 weeks, insisting America would ultimately, the United States would prevail. Fast forward to the 9th of March, the messaging shifted once again with Donald Trump claiming the United States has already won in many ways and the war could end soon. So from threats of annihilation to predictions of weeks-long conflict to saying it's a quick victory or will be a quick victory, White House goalposts appear to be moving as the conflict now enters day 12 very soon. India Today gets you more in this report.
Mr. President, you've said the war is, quote, very complete, but your defense secretary says this is just the beginning. So which is it, and how long should Americans be prepared?
Well, I think you could say both.
It appears that US's ongoing action against Iran will go down in history as Schrodinger's war. It's a war that's both over and not over at the same time. It's a war that's both very complete and just beginning. A classic case of Donald Trump boasting his military's progress while keeping options open. A week ago, Trump said the war will continue for 4 to 5 weeks.
We have the strongest and most powerful by far military in the world, and we will easily prevail. We're already substantially ahead of our time projections, but whatever the time is, it's okay. Whatever it takes, we will always, and we have right from the beginning, we projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that. We'll do it.
It's been 1 week since then, and Trump now says they are ahead of the initial timeline and the war will end very soon.
We're winning very decisively. We're way ahead of schedule. Our military is the greatest in the world, with the greatest equipment and the greatest people in the world. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. If we did not hit them, they were going to take over the Middle East. So we stopped it with good timing, and we're very proud to be involved in this, and it's going to be ended soon.
But before the world could breathe a sigh of relief, Trump walked back on his comments, saying while he could call it an end, he is going to go further.
We could call it a tremendous success right now as we leave here. I could call it, or we could go further, and we're going to go further.
Just days ago, Trump said that he would not stop the war until Iran's unconditional surrender. Tehran has outrightly rejected that option time and again. But with global oil supply and shipping traffic on the line, it appears Trump has had to change strategy. He has signaled an end to the war, but to maintain pressure on Tehran at the same time, Trump opted for what he knows best, another threat, to hit Iran 20 times harder if it stops oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump's mixed messaging came on the back of his call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, who offered proposals for a quick settlement to the war.
Президент Путин
From the very beginning of this story, before the military phase began, President Putin proposed options for our mediation and good offices that could help reduce tensions. Many of these proposals are still on the table.
Trump said after the call that Putin wanted to and could be helpful in ending the war. But the question is the United States willing to accept that help? Trump's flip-flops have put the war's timeline, nature, objectives and consequences all hanging in the balance. And the world has been left scrambling for signs of when this massive military operation could end. Preksha Jain for India Today.
And joining me now to make sense of these developments is Lieutenant General D.P. Pandey, former Director General of India's Territorial Army and Kashmir Corps Commander. Also with me is Ambassador Michael Herzog, former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Ambassador Herzog, welcome. Let me begin by asking you, is this war going as per plan, or is Iran fighting back better than expected?
No, it is going as planned. I think there's overwhelming force, a combined American and Israeli force that overwhelms the Iranians. And the first goal is to destroy their strategic capabilities, the nuclear capabilities, the ballistic missile capabilities, the Iranian Navy, their air defense. That is going according to the plan. I can tell you, sitting in Tel Aviv, their ability to retaliate with missiles has gone down by the day because both our air forces are taking out their launchers and their missiles and their production sites. So in terms of destroying their strategic capabilities, I think this is going as planned. And but the other set of goals that has to do with establishing the conditions for a future regime change, that's more amorphous. And I think it's premature to tell.
But this would indicate, General Pandey, that this war could go on endlessly, and the manner in which Iran continues to use its drones and missiles to target Gulf countries and assets in Gulf countries. There's fear, there's apprehension, global economy is in tailspin. So for Israel and the US fight, it's the world that's paying a very heavy cost already.
First of all, the biggest cost is on Iran because every day that goes by dismantles their capabilities. They have tried to show that this is a regional war by striking numerous Arab countries, civilian targets, energy infrastructure, and so on. I think they made a mistake because they alienated all of those actors and turned them against them. There is, of course, a cost in terms of oil prices. The fact that the Strait of Hormuz are effectively closed, but I believe that the US is trying to come up with several answers. One of them is to offer insurance for shipping companies. The other one is to say that the US Navy may accompany ships in the Straits. The third is to destroy the Iranian Navy, even though that's insufficient. And the fourth is to generate more energy into the international markets, including, I understand, allowing Indian refineries to buy, for once, Russian oil. So, but all of these will take time. In the meantime, we've seen oil prices. But I think if you look at the overall balance, every day that goes by weakens Iran, but we do have to think about the day after and what would be the exit strategy. And there's one
Yes.
person who will ultimately decide, that's President Trump.
Okay, stay with me for a moment, Ambassador. Let me bring in General Pandey into this conversation. General Pandey, is that also your reading, or is Iran doing better than what was initially anticipated, General Pandey? And if Iran can stay on in this battle longer, the longer Iran can stay, use those missiles to target either Israel or American interests or Gulf countries, it just would indicate that the world is a very dangerous place. Two, Iran is able to stand up to perhaps the most powerful forces in the world.
So, Gaurav, thank you for having me over for your show. Firstly, let's be clear that when political people come to the forum to talk and onto the media, they will not share the entire plan, right? I will agree with what Trump is saying because we can give a different spin for conversation. But the bottom line is, let's say there are three major war aims, and let's look at backwards in the reverse order. The third most very very important was taking out the ballistic missile system and the capacity to hit by Iran to hit Saudis, Gulf countries, and of course I will not talk of American bases because American bases are within those in these areas. So they may not be able to take out 100%, but if they are able to degrade to a great extent, I think that's a great achievement. Even and very clear in last about 10 days, we have seen that the number of assaults and waves which are going from the Iranian side has started reducing, while the air defense capacities have also reduced on the other side. But the entire Iran is under domination of the American forces in terms of air operation, carrying out strike without any challenge. The second, very, very important, was taking out the nuclear capability of existing, not existing. But I believe totally because having seen the conversation coming out from Iran and also from other people, it was Iran had the capacity in a couple of more months to be able to actually enrich uranium. Weaponizing may have taken a little bit more time, maybe, but
Okay.
definitely they were quite on this thing. So you wait for another year or 2 years to do this. The pain point would be same for the region and for the world. So maybe Trump and Israel has taken a call to carry out this now, which is much more faster and better. The third is about regime change. What is regime change? Uh, Killing or taking out top 10 leaders, including supreme leader, is not regime change, right? And I think let's grant Israel with the kind of intelligence they have had and
Okay.
sensibility and the strategic community of Americans to know what the meaning of regime change. As long regime is not able to operate with the impunity it did and giving the psychological or strategic orientation and direction, I think it's okay. But yet, the last point I'll just say about Hormuz, and this was my view from the start, that as the
Yes.
time will fly, you will find that Hormuz will start flowing oil. The only challenge about insurance, there has been instances before as well. They can be moved. The tankers can start moving once Iranian navy goes out. But to say 100% security and safety for the tankers going around, I think that'll be quite silly because Houthis and all have been doing all the strike. But I
Yes.
must give one credit to the Israelis or the Americans that the triple H we were thinking which were going to go berserk Hamas has been subdued to great extent.
Okay.
Hezbollah's leadership has been taken out 3 times over. The capacity to hit with the rockets is diminishing by the day, with Lebanon actually taking control. And Houthis, which were my actually most
Big
important
concern
worry,
in Red Sea.
has
Yes.
been, yeah, they have been bought off. I think somewhere this radical element has been bought off by the Americans or by somebody, right? That they have just not shown hand for the support of Iran. So look at the three H's out. But yet to say that a terror strike, we may do anything to Pakistan, but a terror strike from the Pakistan just cannot be closed. So similarly, a surviving element of Iran will always
Okay.
remain to persist to carry out some activity, but credible military force application may
That's
not
a
happen.
good point that you make. And let me bring in Ambassador Herzog back into this conversation. Ambassador, Iran's regime change, has Israel war-gamed it effectively? Because we were told Mossad is very well entrenched on ground. The moment Ayatollah is decapitated or assassinated, as Iran puts it, thousands and thousands of people will take to the streets, not just in Tehran, but across the country. That hasn't happened. Did Israel go wrong there, sir?
So first, let me clarify that regime change was never defined as a formal goal of this war, neither by the Israeli government nor by the US government. What our leadership said is that we want first and foremost to destroy their strategic capabilities that could threaten us and the region, and then create the conditions for regime change in the future, which has to be carried out by the Iranian people. It cannot be carried out from the outside or through air raids and the likes. Now, for that to happen, I think the regime has to be significantly weakened, especially the repressive network of the regime that butchered their own people. And you have to see cracks in the regime itself, defections, disobedience, and all that. We have not seen much of that. I'm not very much impressed by talk about, armed minorities like the Kurds carrying out like a revolution. I don't think this is realistic, and I don't think they are strong enough. To me, the real game changer might occur if we see units from the regular army, different than the Revolutionary Guards, which are more ideological. If we see units from the regular army defecting and turning their guns against the regime, then we can assess that. But there is a paradox here in the picture, because both President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister called on the Iranian people to take to the streets, but that's unlikely to happen as long as the war goes on, as long as there's bombing.
True.
So for us to know if the Iranian people are going out to the street, the war has to stop first.
So, Ambassador, before I bring in the general once again, tell me this. Do the Americans have the stomach for a long drawn-out affair? And how long would an affair, how long drawn-out would this affair be, given the kind of intense bombing that's costing $1 billion a day for the Americans, a couple of $1 billion a week for the Israelis? How long will this continue?
So that's an excellent question that everybody is asking. And my recommendation is to focus less on what Trump says, because he has mixed messages, and focus more on his considerations. So on the one hand, and this is what I hear from my conversations with people in the administration, they are saying, we have amassed tremendous forces and military capabilities in the region, so we want to maximize the achievement, and that requires some time. You can't just do it overnight. If you really want to destroy their strategic capabilities, it takes time. And every day that goes by, Iran weakens, and their capacity to retaliate is weakened. As I said, we see it in the amount of missiles they fire at us. On the other hand, there are considerations against a long war. It's very unpopular in the United States. It's a war of choice. And several Americans were already killed in action. And most importantly, the cost of oil and the impact on the international economy. And this is a year of midterm elections in the United States. Gas prices have already soared in the United States. And this calls for an early exit. So if I sum up all of these considerations, I don't expect Trump to kind of opt out in the next very few days, but I don't think he will exceed the framework that he himself outlined of a few weeks. So I would give it maybe 1-2 weeks before he opts out.
So another 2 weeks, because last time in 2025, the war lasted 12 days. It achieved limited, returns or gains. This time, it's already day 11. And General, before I come to you, I want to talk about Iran's capabilities as on date. I also want to talk about the layered air defense system for the protection of Israel. So Iran has threatened to target Israel with newer generation missiles, including hypersonic missiles, some that can travel 14 times the speed of sound. The United States and Israel have a multi-tiered grid in place for the protection of Israel from incoming Iranian missiles, rockets and drones. So as the crow flies, let's take a look at that map. As the crow flies, the distance between Tehran and Tel Aviv is approximately 1,600 kilometers, 1,592 kilometers to be precise. Iran has several ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, even hypersonic missiles capable of hitting targets more than 2,000 kilometers away. So every bit of Israel is within the reach of Iranian missiles. The United States has multiple bases across this region, but just look at the map there. Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Jordan, and then Israel. Virtually everywhere, the US has bases in between. The satellites, the drones, the reconnaissance aircraft, and the radars. They can triangulate the exact location the moment a missile is fired from Iran, or in case of satellites, they can just monitor almost constantly. The radars track the flight of the missile. The US and Israel have a command and control center that identify the incoming threat. Usually, it's a barrage of missiles, rockets, and drones. It's to saturate the air defense system. But then they're also using artificial intelligence, from what sources tell India Today, to identify the immediate threat and the threats that will fall harmlessly in open areas, or ones that will take down vital assets or vital points. The US has its Patriot missile batteries deployed, take for example at the Ain al-Assad base in Iraq. The US also has both the Patriot and the THAAD, or the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Missiles. Their batteries are there in Jordan's Muafiq Sati Air Base, for example. The same base in Jordan also has the F-15 Striking Eagle Squadron, and these F-15s are in an air defense role. Now, should the incoming threat not be taken down at various levels, either by Jordan or by Iraq or by Saudi Arabia, the US has an aircraft carrier strike group deployed in the Mediterranean Sea to take down any incoming threat, because the aircraft carrier strike group has its own anti-missile defense system. It can spot missiles from the moment they are launched and decide which missile is to be taken down. Israel has its own multi-tiered air defense system, from the Iron Dome to the David Sling to Patriot and THAAD systems, all geared to take down incoming missiles at different altitudes and at different distances. The Iron Dome, for example, is designed for point defense. It can take down even an incoming artillery barrage or short-range rockets between 30 and 70 kilometers away. The THAAD, supplied by Pentagon, that area defense system can intercept an incoming missile outside the atmosphere, actually, up to 200 kilometers. The David Sling, again, it's a middle-tier Israeli missile defense shield that can intercept a cruise missile, and of course short-range ballistic missiles up to 300 kilometers. Then you also have the Arrow system, the Arrow 3. They can target medium-range ballistic missiles, and they can go up to 2,400 kilometers, take down the threat at source. Both the US and Israel have their fighter jets in the air to take down an incoming threat should it dodge this multi-tiered system. And given the speed of a hypersonic missile, the Iranian strategy is to saturate the skies with drones, with rockets, with missiles, so that the system gets overwhelmed. And there have been instances that targets have been hit. And I want to bring in General Pandey on this. General, Israel may have the best air defense system and US may support it. Somewhere down the line, does Iran still have the capability, and especially when Iran is threatening that it will now hit with newer generation missiles with 1-ton payload and more, is the threat only increasing now?
Yeah, so, any system, any tech HR system can be always overwhelmed. It's just about design, effort, and how to get under the tech. Now, hypersonics have got the speed and the range to reach out and hit out in case. Everybody may have layered, in case all these layers work. These strikes which have been landing into Israel and to the bases would have not done so. And they have been able to achieve. But aim is, right now, Gaurav, I think it's very important that you carry out also an analysis that while there is the $1 billion expenditure for the US government, how much do they have as a backup? Because right now they have not even spent a percentage of their actual kitty into this operation. Now let's go to the Iranian side. How much
Yes.
expenditure is Iranians taking in terms of damage and even firing an hypersonic? Every hypersonic missile or a ballistic missile which is fired has got a cost which has to come about. And how much empowered in terms of economic terms is Iran is. So how many can you fire? When you carry out these parameter checks, and every hypersonic missile must have an equitable damage requirement to be done. So, they may fire at a establishment, let's say an air base. It may land at an air base has got no value. It may hit a oil depot. When you say oil depots have got storage tanks, and they
Yes.
may hit one storage tank. How much is the damage which is going to be out? It will not be contained. So the challenge of a hypersonic and expensive missile to travel 1,600 kilometers where it can be intercepted. The issue is that how many will actually land and what are
Okay.
the consequences will happen when you carry out this expense to the result ratio. I don't think you look at the cost. They have
Okay.
fired thousands of missiles, but
True.
they have only eight servicemen of US, maybe more have lost life, right? Which is not retrievable. But everything which America has spent in terms of billions of dollars has got a possibility of retrieving. So I
That's a
think
good
let's
point you
look
made.
at this
But
way.
since you mentioned some of the systems that are being used, Iran is now deploying cluster warheads. And I want to, for a moment, also focus on the newer missiles that Iran is using. Iran is now deploying cluster warhead missiles in its attack on Israel. Now, that's a tactic that various defense analysts argue is designed not just to overwhelm the air defense systems of Israel, but also cause maximum damage and for a sustained period of time. Because Iran has been using these warheads since the 28th of February, including various variants of the Khurram-Sheher ballistic missile, the range of nearly 2,000 kilometers. These missiles are designed to break open mid-air and release up to 80 bomblets, 80 smaller bomblets, about 20 kilograms each, and then they scatter across a wide area, sometimes cover between 15 to 20 kilometers. Instead of tracking a single incoming missile, then the air defense system is suddenly facing about dozens of falling targets at one go, and those targets remain live for a considerable period of time. It can explode even much later. So it has the potential not just to overwhelm the Iron Dome, but each bomblet carries between 7 kilograms to 10 kilograms of explosives. They can spread damage across a wider area. Some of these submunitions can travel at extremely high speed. Some of these cluster bombs, and especially the airburst version, when it explodes in the air and you have shrapnel that falls to the ground with a great velocity, it can cause massive, massive damage on ground. And I want to bring in Ambassador Herzog into this conversation once again. Ambassador, is this the biggest threat that Israel faces right now? The newer age munition, the submunitions, the cluster bombs that Iran is using?
First, let me say that we might hear the sirens any moment. If that happens, I will have to go to the bomb shelter.
Stay safe, sir.
But in any case, let me add to your excellent summary of the air defense systems that we and the Americans have. If you look at the Iranian arsenal, as the war started, our intelligence assessed that they had around 2,000 ballistic missiles with a range to Israel, and several hundred launchers, mobile launchers and others. As of today, I understand that over 80% of them were degraded, taken out by American and Israeli air forces, and their ability to use those missiles has gone down considerably and will continue to go down. On top of that, and this is a big difference from the 12-day war which you mentioned, this time Israel and the Americans are going after their industrial bases where they produce those missiles, so they cannot reconstitute this arsenal in a very fast way after the war. Now, it's different when you talk about the Gulf states, because there the range is much closer. It's 300 to 500 kilometers, and there the Iranians have a much bigger arsenal, several thousand of them, and those countries do not have an air defense system capable as the one that we have. And they are basically reliant on the Americans. Now, you asked about
and that's the question. Have the Americans left partners in the Gulf region down? And perhaps, Ambassador, that's a question that we leave for another day. And I hope you join me, because I've run out of time on this part of the show. I have to slip into a quick break here. I want to thank both my guests on the... So the West Asia conflict has now triggered a serious LPG crisis across South Asia, gas and fuel, and not just in India, the situation in Bangladesh, the situation in Pakistan. There is a crisis. Energy routes are impacted. Supply chain is hit. India, however, appears to be relatively insulated, at least for now. Government sources say LPG stocks remain comfortable. Supplies are being replenished regularly to prevent any immediate shortage, especially to households. But the situation is far more severe in our neighborhood. Take, for example, Pakistan. Take, for example, Bangladesh. Pakistan is facing a massive spike in fuel prices, in LPG prices, and supply disruptions. There are fears of shortages in several cities. In Bangladesh, the conflict has pushed up import costs. Supplies are being tightened. Now, there are concerns over cooking gas availability for millions of households in Bangladesh. Now, with the Strait of Hormuz under threat, energy markets under pressure, experts warn LPG crunch across the region perhaps could worsen in the coming days. And we'll be tracking that story closely. Welcome back. Iran's President Massoud Pezeshkian has just issued a statement, and he's hit out at those waging war against Iran. He says adversaries who believe they can destroy the country are entertaining an illusion. In a social media post, he says, and I quote, "Iran is the heir to a civilization at least 6,000 years old. Through the trials of history, no power has ever succeeded in erasing Iran's name. Anyone who entertains this illusion of destroying Iran knows nothing of Iran's history. Aggressors have come, aggressors have gone, Iran has endured." US Iranian officials say at this point of time that it is Tehran that will determine how long this war lasts. They're also saying Iran's army is now ready for a war of attrition, and this could lead to a long-term confrontation. US-Israeli strikes have continued across the country in recent hours. The World Health Organization has warned that the black rain and toxic compounds in the air in Iran's air after these attacks on oil facilities as part of the US-Israeli bombing campaign could cause severe health issues for those living in and around Tehran. So the situation is very dire. God forbid it could turn worse in the hours and days ahead. And that's a story we'll be tracking very closely. That is all I have for you on India First this evening. Many thanks for watching. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.